don't know if everybody can make it to Challenger, but I know anybody can make it to Masters. Hello, everybody. My name is WillieP. If you guys don't know, I maintain Masters Plus 100% of the time, and every now and then on our high-low pushes, we crack into Grandmasters and Challenger. Today, we are going to cover the long-forgotten and long-appreciated art of tanking. We're going to go through things that I guarantee 95% of Diamond players don't know, and hopefully, we're all going to learn even from the laner standpoint who doesn't play tank, but also from the people who do play tank. All of us are going to learn together how tanks work, what makes them effective, and how to both play against them effectively, but play as them effectively. As always, if you disagree in any way, just do me a huge favor. Leave me a comment on either telling me where you disagree so I can challenge my perspective. I read all my comments, or tell me how I can improve the video. If you dislike the video, though, it's going to hurt me more than it helps you. I'm a small content creator just like you. I've got hopes and dreams. Okay, I've got 10 little points prepared, and we're going to go through each of those. But before we go into this, I would like to offer a general introduction to tanking in League of Legends. Number one, tanking is probably the most underappreciated and undervalued aspect of the game in the League community. Everybody in 2025 just wants to do flashy damage, hee-ha, woohoo, flashy plays, wow. Tanks are usually the silent carries of the team, and oftentimes you do need a tank on every single team comp. Very rarely, even in full glass cannon poke team comps, does that strategy work out. Secondly, tanks are kind of a selfless role where what your primary role is to do is to soak cooldowns. If you think about it in League of Legends, there's only 5 characters, right? And so 5 times 4 buttons means the enemy team only has 20 buttons, and you want to get as many of those buttons used on you as possible, so that way it opens up your damage people in order to carry. Thirdly, it's a giant game of don't die, distract, soak cooldowns, but also you want to be constantly thinking about how to itemize, and you will never be building the same items every game. Contrary to popular belief, effective tanking is very, very, very difficult, and I think a lot of people don't understand that tanks truly win or lose a lot of the games in high elo to the same extent that ADCs do. Since nobody wants to play tank, if you do choose to play any sort of tank champion, tank playstyle, there's a very high chance you're going to climb pretty consistently because nobody in solo queue will play a tanky champion. By tanking, we obviously just mean you're a tank. You're building a lot of resistances, you're building health items, you're not building damage items. And people would say, why would you do that? Isn't the point of the game to carry and to kill the enemy team? That's what most people refuse to understand in the League community, is that tanks quite literally do kill the enemy team by soaking cooldowns and enabling other people to do damage. The easiest way, and this is our first point, to tell whether or not you're building and itemizing effectively as a tank is the damage split when you die. This little pie chart at the top of your death screen is all you need to know on whether or not you're spending your gold correctly as a tank. As a tank, there are really only 3 things that really matter that you're building: health, magic resist, and armor. Armor reduces physical damage, magic resist reduces magic damage, and then health, of course, just increases your total health pool. Every point of health you have, though, you also have, as you level up, more and more base resistances. Riot programs each character a little differently depending on the character you're playing, but each character gets more and more resistances as the game goes on. Simply by building health, all of your base resistances are getting applied to your health pool. If you've got a high health pool, though, usually it makes sense to build resistances because it's kind of like walking around in a shell of armor with absolutely nothing inside. If you've got a bunch of armor and no health, it doesn't matter because you'll still get one shot, and if you've got a bunch of health but no armor, you're still gonna get one shot because all the damage will get through to you. Magic resist is incredible. Obviously, it's stopping magic damage burst, and then of course the final form of damage in League of Legends is called true damage. Damage is the ultimate cheat code. It goes through both armor and magic resist, meaning there's literally no point to build either against true damage champions. Against true damage champions, if we rock, paper, scissors tanking, health is actually your best bet. When you die, this pie chart is going to tell you everything you need to know on whether or not you're itemizing correctly. If there is way too much damage in one category, you're spending a lot of gold in the wrong places, either health or resistances, when you need to be heavily spending one type of resistance. If you're seeing a bunch of true damage, you didn't build enough health. Your health pool is too small, and these true damage champions, which usually aren't percent HP damage, I think Vayne's the only one in the game that can do that. So health is the ultimate counter to true damage dealing champions. If you see a healthy split between armor, magic resist, and true damage, and the damage split is perfectly 33%, great. You're itemizing completely correct as a tank. You just need to work on, guess what? Not dying and seeing this pie chart. You're just limit testing a little too much. But the more balanced this pie chart is, it is a better representation for how you are building as a tank. On the theme of damage split, my second point is if the enemy team is full AD, build armor items. I mean, come on, guys. If the team is full magic damage, build a lot of magic resist. Put 2 and 2 together there. If you see the enemy team lock in too many damage champions of the one type, you heavily want to consider playing a tank because you're going to have a lot of fun. Tanks are super, super fun when the enemy team locks in full AP or full AD because they can never kill you. You get to build all the same resistances, and as you continue to build more and more resistances while there's mitigating returns, you literally become unkillable at a certain point. Riot tries to bottleneck you by making mitigating returns on resistances because they know you eventually become unkillable as a tank if the damage split is too unbalanced on the enemy team. Thirdly, like I mentioned, and this is really important for all tanks in the game to remember, your early game will not be good, and here's why. You're a tank. You're reliant on getting your base resistances higher and higher and higher, and this doesn't happen until you get experience. This is why you'll see a lot of tanks oftentimes build Rod of Ages. In the jungle, they'll power farm, or a lot of the times what they'll do is they'll stay in lane up until usually level 11 when they get 2 points on R, because up until that point, tanks are very, very weak. Always remember that as you level up, your base resistances get higher and higher and higher, and if you build things like Jack Show, which ramps your resistances, you just get more and more effective as the game goes on. Most people will tell you that tanks are kind of one of the best scaling things in the game. Number 4, when you are playing a tank, you really have to think about whether or not the enemy team has percent damage on their team comp. Think of champions like Yone and Vayne. If they have a lot of percent HP damage, you want to build more resistances like Frozen Heart. If you see items like Blade of the Ruined King, if you've never thought about it, Frozen Heart is the perfect counter to Blade of the Ruined King because your health pool doesn't get higher, which means the Blade of the Ruined King's percent HP doesn't do more. They can lifesteal less because you're applying a huge debuff to them, and it's an attack speed item and you're building in an anti-attack speed item. If they've got percent HP damage on the enemy team, you really want to prioritize resistances over health pool. My 5th point for you guys, and you really want to think about this, and I mentioned this in the death recap, if the enemy team has true damage, so think of champions like Camille, Olaf, Cho'Gath ult, Garen ult, you really want to build health. Heartsteel and some of these giant Titanic Hydra, for instance, giant health items are really, really good against high true damage dealing champions because health is the perfect counter to true damage. Most true damage champions, again, don't have max health also attached to it. The other thing you got to think about as a tank is what is your role in a team fight? And usually there's 2 roles. Diving the enemy carry or peeling your carries, right? If the enemy team has champions that cannot deal with tanks, think of champions like Kha'Zix, Jhin, XYZ. These champions truly struggle against high health, high armor tanks and have no idea what to do if they're just running at them. Usually in these games, you're going to be leaning more towards diving rather than peeling. If the enemy team has a lot of great solutions for tanks and a lot of high percent damage and tank shredders, then your job turns into primarily peeling your carry because oftentimes those same champions really struggle against burst damage. You really want to think about your role before committing to any one playstyle. And again, good effective tanks will tell you the role changes every game. Even if you think you're not a diving champion, sometimes if they've got no answer for a tank, you just want to run in a straight line at them, even on a weird champion that doesn't seem like they should be chasing. My 7th point goes out to my shield boys. Most tanks in the game usually have shields attached, not everyone. Any tank out there like Skarner, Udyr, Sion, any of these tanky shield boys, you always want to think about a couple items that the enemy team can build. Number 1 is Serpent's Fang, pop shields. There are also 3 champions in the game, Rel, Blitzcrank, and Renekton, if you don't know, that can pop shields. They have a built-in mechanic that just pops shields. In addition, if they build Executioner's Calling or any other anti-heal item, usually that hurts tanks because most tanks want a sustained fight with things like Conqueror, Grasp of the Undying, Unending Despair, which is an item you can build that gives you a lot of healing over time. The other thing you want to think about as a shield champ is this dragon right here is the Chemtech dragon, and this buffs your shields. This dragon alongside Mountain Dragon, which gives you resistances, are truly your 2 best friends as a tank. If you see these dragons, you should almost drop minion waves on a tower to come get them. because they make you so effective at your job. The theme of shields, I've got a TikTok short floating out there somewhere talking about this, but shields are truly the most broken form of damage mitigation, and here's why. They don't increase your max health, so max health doesn't do anything. They're on demand, so you get to use them when you get to see incoming damage. Base resistance and all added resistances that you have purchased apply to shields if you don't know. This means as the game goes on and your shields get larger and larger, not only are the shields getting larger, but your resistance are applying to those shields. Finally, and we'll get into this in a second here, when they start building things like flat pin and armor pin, shields literally stop all of that because you've got a shield. Usually they're trying to get armor pin to get through to your health bar, and shields prevent you from taking damage on your health bar, which is what you're trying to protect. There are even things in the game right now like tier 3 merc treads and tier 3 armored plated steel caps, alongside items like Canic Rooker and Hex Drinker XYZ that give you forms of shielding that you can abuse on champions that already have built-in shields. If you've never done the Canic Rooker and tier 3 Merc Treads combo, truly there's not a single magic champion in the game that can burst through that. It is way too much magic resist and way too many shields. And even if they've got percent HP damage, guess what? You've got a bunch of shields. Those shields are giving you a bonus health pool without giving you a bonus health pool, if that makes sense. Probably end up having 11 topics because this next topic is actually about how flat pin and percent pin in this game works if you don't know. Flat pin is lethality, and then of course magic pin. If you read Sork Boots, they'll just say plus magic pin. There's another form of magic pin and armor pin called percent pin on items like Last Whisper, and then also on magic pin items such as Void Staff, which give percent pin. If you see the enemy team stacking a lot of flat pin, so lethality items, Storm Surge, Shadow Flame, as a tank you will be unkillable because that type of penetration takes whatever your base or normal armor and magic resist and reduces it by a flat amount. In other words, the enemy team is spending gold trying to get you in one-shot territory by reducing your armor to a certain amount, but you're building way too much armor to offset all that gold they're spending on it. If the enemy team builds percent pin, that's where as a tank you need to be concerned. Again, like we mentioned in the last point, shields will be your ultimate counter to percent pin because they kind of stop that and give you on demand to protect your health bar. This next point is a little bit more conceptual, but there are choke points in League of Legends, and as a tank, you literally want to be just in the front soaking cooldown. Choke points are a tank's best friend because you can bring the enemy team into you and then give your enemy team a very clear bottleneck to focus all their damage. In addition, if you happen to have flash as a tank, you can bottleneck them up and then just flash back defensively, and it almost guarantees wins the team fight if you soak enough damage. The best choke points that I can tell you is this one, 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 this one. This one is really good here as well, but anytime you see these walls that are congregating together, just bring the enemy team into you. You almost want to be a giant distraction, and these are the ideal 10 out of 10 spots to fight because, again, this is where you want to be. You want the enemy team to kind of funnel themselves into you. Next point, especially on tank, is really, really important because you need to think about boot selection and whether or not to build Deadmans. Why am I mentioning Deadmans? Most tanks build Deadmans if you don't know because it gives you both armor, health, and a critically important stat called slow resistance. The only other way you can get slow resistance is Phase Rush and Swifties. Merc Treads, while it does reduce the durations of slows, does not actually reduce the effectiveness of slows, which is what slow resistance does. If you are a tank and the enemy team has a lot of crowd control, you should almost always go Merc Treads. The enemy team has a lot of auto attackers, you should almost always go defensive boots. The reason why is usually most tanks at some point build an item called Jack's Show, which ramps the other value of your added resistances. If you build defensive boots versus something like Swifties or cooldown boots, you're going to increase the value of those boots as well with that Jack Show passive. While Swifties are really, really good, usually I just encourage tanks to build Deadmans because, again, Deadmans gives you slow resistance and tenacity, which is the other thing that reduces all forms of crowd control, I think, except knockups, is really, really good because if you pair Merc Treads and Deadmans, you've got tenacity for the hard crowd control and slow resistance for the slowing effects. One reduces the effectiveness of slows, one reduces the duration of slows. Boot selection and whether or not to build Deadman's Plate depends on the enemy team comp, but all tanks really should think about these two things every single game. what type of boots to build, and whether or not we're going to be plugging in Deadmans into our build because the enemy team has a lot of slowing effects. The 10th and final thing I'll say, and this is important for every character in League, but especially tanks. Most tanks have lower cooldowns. You constantly want them to be on cooldown. If you are standing around and not using your abilities, you're honestly wasting a lot of potential, and especially shielding abilities or defensive abilities. You want to constantly have them on cooldown because it is inefficient to not use them. That being said, of course, you want to save them for opportune moments, but by not having it on cooldown, oftentimes you're not doing your job as tank and you're missing a lot of efficiency. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know these videos are very ranty, but I feel like League really is one of those games of you don't know what you don't know, and there's a lot of knowledge that I just kind of have to, you know what I mean, in order to get it out there. While I could put up flashy pentakill gameplay, I've got a gameplay channel if you want to see that type of stuff. And so I would just encourage anybody that's looking for that type of stuff. I stream. I've got a gameplay channel. This is meant to be more like, all right, let's get us to Masters. Let's, deep dive a topic, snappy, get it on, move on to the next topic. Thank you again for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We'll have this all in a playlist. And if you want to see the next topic, make sure to stick around. See you there. Bye.